Hello, this is Christine, physical therapist and creator of Aging with Ability, where my goal is to provide encouraging resources for older adults to improve their health and age well. Welcome to today's episode of the Aging with Ability podcast. Today's episode falls under the theme of Memory Monday, where we talk about all things aging and cognitive changes, including diagnoses, medication, and healthy living tips. What year is it? What day of the week is it? If Barbara works at a bank and has 12 apples, what is her profession? If questions like this seem familiar, you may have taken a cognitive test. Today I want to talk about what is cognition and how it changes with aging. So first of all, let's start with a definition. The mental action or process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thought, experience, and the senses. This includes both short and long-term memory, experience, and task sequencing and planning. Considering that definition of cognition, we also have a definition for cognitive deficit. So a cognitive deficit is an inclusive term used to describe impairment in an individual's mental processes that lead to the acquisition of information and knowledge and drive how an individual understands and acts in the world. Cognitive changes with aging are normal, but the degree to which they interrupt your daily life and the cause of the deficit, whether acute or chronic, is often used to define level of deficit. I take cognition into account every visit with my patients. This may be when I'm making a decision about how long they're going to take to learn something, or whether it's an appropriate activity for them, considering their cognitive level or falls risk. And also in interdisciplinary decision making. We may discuss a patient's cognition in relation to whether or not we recommend a higher level of care for that person. So cognition plays a huge role in how safe and independent you can be as you age. Let's think about a more specific example of cognitive processes. So one part of cognition, vocabulary, typically is something that's maintained over time and can even improve with age and learning and your educational level. But a disease such as a stroke can directly impact vocabulary and your ability to understand language or to express language. Let's contrast that with processing speed, memory, and reasoning, which typically do decline in normal aging. So the severity of that decline and the speed at which you decline, whether that's in the presence of a disease or not, plays a huge role in decision making regarding living situation, need for caregivers, and your general safety. Cognition is such a huge overarching term for the things that we do every day and that our brain is working behind the scenes to help us do. We don't consciously think about buttoning our shirt or tying our shoes in general, and yet it gets done. We can be thinking about something else. Or in the kitchen, you're making something and you're not consciously thinking, I need to stir it 5 times. You just stir it. You just do it. You're living life, your brain is working, you're doing it. So when that changes and simple tasks become hard, or when you start to realize that your short-term memory is starting to experience changes, such as what did you have for breakfast? And you have to really think about it. Or what did you do last Tuesday? And you have to think about it and try to work your way backwards to it. Those are some of the subtle changes that can occur. You know, we all forget things every once in a while. We all forget where we put our keys down in the house, or example like that. But when those start to become regular things and you start to have an impact on your daily life, that's when those cognitive changes really do add up. And then that's like chronic aging, small changes over time. Contrast that with someone who has a stroke and it affects your brain directly with either a bleed or a clot. And they're going to see changes that happen very quickly and noticeably. So it might have been easy for them to drive a car, make a meal, get themselves dressed, but now they need time to think, time to relearn that task. And part of that is the physical side of things in the example of a stroke, where you have to retrain your muscles, retrain your body in order to follow through as much as you can with the deficit that's left. But part of that is also just the cognitive processing. It's not subconscious anymore to do those daily tasks. Now it takes conscious effort. And that takes energy as well. So thinking about what you used to do 20 years ago without even thinking about it, and now you have to use more energy in order to do that, you might notice that change as well. Things that were easy for you to do in a day, and now you do those same things and you're more tired. And that could be either some physical deficits, such as muscle weakness or you being less active overall, but it can also be that energy it takes to just think through things. So that's a little bit of a short idea about what the difference is as far as a chronic issue with cognition, where normal aging processes do occur, and we can compensate for those in a lot of ways, such as making a to-do list or putting a written reminder in a visual location where we can see it. And those are some strategies that maybe we'll discuss on a future episode. And the acute changes to cognition that occur with a pathology, such as a stroke. I use that as an example because it's such a dramatic difference. 1 minute you're doing what you're doing, and the next you've suffered this big event that can have huge implications for cognition and physical ability. I want to end every episode with a quick tip conclusion. So for today, the quick tip conclusion is if you have never had a cognitive test, it might be good to ask your primary care physician about having one, or if you're already working with a physical therapist, an occupational therapist, or a speech therapist, they can guide you in doing one as well. This can help you get a baseline for your cognitive abilities and assess over time and see those little changes. And then you can flag up any change early on and do some preventative management or activities that can help slow decline with aging. It also helps from a medical standpoint, having that on record, even if it shows that your cognition is doing great, which we love to see, but it also will identify what your previous level of ability was if something major does happen, such as cognitive changes after an infection or after having a big event like a stroke. And it just helps us give that information as to what you were like before this happened so we can have reasonable goals that we can make. And also it can help to justify therapy because it will show that your prior level was higher than you're at right now. So that's my quick tip today. Try to talk to your doctor about a cognitive exam if you haven't had one in the recent past, and just gives you a baseline, gives you some knowledge about maybe an area that you can be working on in particular, because those tests help to decide if there's a particular area of memory you're struggling with, and then you can seek resources about that. So that's the quick tip for today. I hope this episode helped you learn a little bit more about cognition and some of the normal changes with aging, and to consider getting a cognitive assessment by your primary care. Also, visit the website agingwithability.com, and there'll be a link in the show notes for my post on brain health with aging, and you can learn a little bit more about the normal changes in a written format and see the other resources that were used to create this episode. Thank you for joining me today, and remember to send any questions you have to Christine@agingwithability.com or comment on the website page associated with this podcast episode or on Facebook or other social media resources. Thanks again. Have a good day. Stay healthy.